Hello and welcome back to another review, and today we're going to take a look at the Indiana Jones Adventure Series, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones. So this is a bit different to my usual reviews. I don't usually review, like 6-inch figures like this, but this one is quite special in the sense that I just really like Indiana Jones. Thank you so much, in fact, I named my dog after him. Yeah, so say hello to, Indiana Bones. Anyways, this is the Indiana Jones figure from the newest line, and of course, like I said earlier, this is Indiana Jones, the main character of the second best Harrison Ford franchise. Of course, the best being Blade Runner. And this is from Hasbro's new line of Indiana Jones 6-inch figures. I guess in preparation for the new movie coming out, we are finally getting a proper 6-inch Indiana Jones toy line. Because as far as I know, in terms of Indiana Jones toys, we got some, I think, like 3 3/4-inch stuff for when Crystal Skull came out. And then I know there was some kind of 7-inch line because I did get like a Temple of Doom one from Disneyland a long time ago. You can see this is a quite nice looking figure. So it's 6-inch, so in a similar sense to Marvel Legends, Star Wars Black Series, G.I. Joe Classified. And he's looking very nice. Of course, this is his original design from the first ever movie. Just back off the camera a bit more so you can see the whole figure. And you can see there is a lot of detail here. We have some nice kind of dry brushing on his jacket here, sides, arm, and then even on the back here. And then when we get to the lower legs, it's very subtle, but there is a bit more of that kind of dry brushing here. And then this is pretty interesting. They actually painted mud on his shoes. That's pretty nice little detail. And then, of course, in terms of details, like I said, there are a ton. They even painted this little tiny gold bit on the belt here. Same here. And we have his little holster for his gun. A little strap here, which we'll use later on for his whip. Then we get more dry brushing on top of his hat, which sadly is not removable, which was kind of surprising. We don't get an alternate head without it. As for the head itself, it's an okay face sculpt. I have seen a lot better from Hasbro, but this one isn't horrible. It's just, it's okay. Yeah, so I'd say the quality of this, it isn't on the level of Marvel Legends. So you can tell this is, like an earlier figure, because this is from the first wave of this new line. As for this guy's accessories, this is really awesome. Remember earlier how I mentioned gun holster? Well, we undo this little strap here. Yes, you can actually undo that. That is awesome. You can then open it up, and inside, you get a little pistol. Maybe a bit tricky to actually hold out. There we go. So we actually get a pistol, and that does actually work. Like that strap, that actually connects into there, and you can actually undo it. And you do get a tiny, tiny little revolver. It's cast in black plastic. It is very flat when it comes to details, but it is pretty cool to see that. And I just love how it can actually store in there with like the working strap and everything. And it just fits into the hand we have equipped right now. So it's just a little trigger finger hand. It may be a bit tricky to get it in, which is usually the kind of thing with these 6-inch figures. But once you can wedge it in there, the finger, and there we go. I think the gun is like a bit thin, but that does mean you can get into the hand a bit easier, so I'm fine with it. And then you can just pose him, just shooting his revolver. Don't know why he's holding it like a shotgun. Here, there. Got him, just shooting. But we all know shooting guns isn't really a style, but what is? A whip. So we get 2 whips in here. Let me get this one first. This is the stored whip. So, well, yeah, it's not stored yet, but it's a folded up version. But it can be stored right here on the belt. So you can hook it through here. I haven't actually tried this yet. I think it goes like that. Yep. And then this just connects into there. It's going to be very tricky because that is tiny. There we go. It is quite tricky to get it in there because it's a tiny, tiny little like peg it's holding in. But it's cool that does actually work. And now you have his whip to store it on the side. If you want to, you can just remove it. But for now, we'll just leave it in there. And that does look really nice. So we now kind of have like that full Indiana Jones look. And of course, getting it out, probably a lot easier than actually putting it in, because you can just rip that open and just yoink that. And one issue I can see with leaving this in for too long is that this will kind of be stuck like that for a while, so you gotta just press it down and hope that it actually stays down, please. Okay, it's just gonna be stuck like that for a while, I guess. Next up, we have some hands. We have a ton of alternate hands in here. First of all, let's take a look at these. So we get a pair of fists. So as currently equipped hands, we'll look at these first. We get a trigger finger hand for using that pistol I showed off earlier. And then you get a kind of wide right hand for just doing like that when he's using his whip, or like in the thumbnail for like kind of grabbing his hat like that. Or if you want, you can pluck each of these off. They're just on a little ball joint, but it's a lot smaller than your usual Hasbro 6-inch ball joint and seems more like what you would find on like an SH figure art, so it's kind of cool to see. And these are more premium feeling Hasbro figures, so I guess that makes sense. And then for alternate hands, you can just pluck them there. Do that the other side. Thankfully, it's not that hard because it can be very tricky to remove hands on a lot of other Hasbro 6-inch figures. Thankfully, it's not too tricky here. And once we get these in, he's now ready for some fist fights, I guess. Yeah. It is cool to get that option because, again, with a lot of Hasbro 6-inch figures, you basically just get the single pair of hands for holding weapons, and they always end up looking a bit awkward. So I like that this guy does include some alternate ones. But we're not done yet. Our next alternate hands, we have this, which looks like identical to this other one. You can see these are both very, very similar. I don't know why they included this one, but they did. You can put that in if you want, but man, it's really similar to this hand, and I think I'm just going to keep using this one. And the other one we get, this one is quite crucial. So we just put in. Come on. Also note that each of these hands, they are actually quite detailed. And I know it probably won't show up in the camera too well. Oh, actually, no. It is. You can see you have all, like, veins and everything in there. Like, they are molded quite nicely. Now that we have this other hand in there, we can grab the accessory. That's it for the hands, by the way. We can grab his next accessory, the whip, and we can put it in. This is, like, probably his most iconic weapon. So you can just plug that into the hands. And he now has a whip. But you'll notice something. It is horribly scrunched up. And that's because of how this figure is packaged. Now, there are pros and cons to this. So, Indiana Jones here, he kind of follows Hasbro's new plastic-free packaging things. So, when you open it up, you get this. So, it says, build an artifact, which is our whole thing. Instead of build a figures, you build whatever MacGuffin is, like, featured from the movie these figures are from. And then, on the back here, it's kind of morbid. You get the figure himself, except he's in, like, a bag, so it looks like he's just in a body bag. But the bag itself is cool because it's just paper, but it kind of looks like a map. And you get another one stored right here, which has all the weapons. So, the pros to that, this figure here, a lot of the times what happens with Marvel Legends, and I'm guessing other Star Wars 6-inch figures, I don't buy too many other ones, the issue is that they will get kind of warped, because the plastic, these are all made of a very rubbery plastic, and a lot of times the plastic tray that holds them in is going to warp the base figure, but not here because there's nothing really holding it in. That's one of the few upsides I can see of this plastic-free packaging thing, except that they're going back to using, actual plastic in the packaging, which is fine, but the first figures they started with were the Marvel Legends. The one figures that actually benefited. But anyways, the con to this is when the accessories are packed, this has to get scrunched up and it ends up like that, which is not very flattering for a whip. It'd be cool if this was kind of like a bendy wire, sort of like what you see on Gunpla, because then you could actually pose it, but I guess they didn't have, like, the budget for that, but it would still be nice because it just, yeah. However, it does look quite nice in his hand, even if it is kind of scrunched up, and you could probably fix it by just hitting it with, like, a hairdryer. And we're almost on the accessories, so yeah, this guy comes with a lot for Hasbro 6-inch. These guys are usually pretty accessory light, and we're almost done. Next we have, this is basically the last accessory that actually pertains to this figure. And we have that weird little idol thing, I don't know the name of that, he stole at the beginning of this movie, which is a pretty cool thing to include. I think there's like a special version of this that actually comes with like the pedestal it was on and the bag of sand. But this is pretty nice, just painted in that nice gold that's also on the kind of straps on the figure itself. So that's pretty cool. You can't really like hold it or anything. It's just a nice thing to include. And then for our final accessories, again, they don't really pertain to this exact figure. They're these, and if you're wondering what these are, they are part of the arc, basically the MacGuffin of this movie, because of that whole like build and artifact thing. I'm surprised this guy included them, because usually, like Marvel Legends, the main character in the movie, they never really include the Build-A-Figure. Like, if you look at Guardians Volume 3, Star-Lord doesn't include part of Cosmo. Although it's debatable whether or not he was a main character of that. But I guess because of how, like, small his first wave is, you can see the box right here, I guess they kind of had to include them with him. But yeah, so if you're just getting one of these figures, like I am, they are kind of useless, but if you're collecting the whole wave, it is a pretty cool little Build-A-Figure, build an artifact kind of thing. And that's it for the accessories. Now we can move on to the articulation. So this is probably going to be like the most controversial part of this figure. So there's some good and some bad. So at the neck, we get a ball joint, but it's very expressive. There might be a second one in there. You can see it's very expressive, and you get a lot of like major motion from that. You wouldn't really need it, but you do get it. Of course, this hat here is kind of rubbery, and you cannot take it off. And the shoulders, this is awesome. We get a butterfly joint, and it's a really good one too. Yeah, so when I first got this figure, I didn't actually realize that he has a butterfly movement because it's hidden under the jacket. Yeah, so you can get a lot of range of motion of that, which is very useful for those whip poses. The shoulder itself is on like your standard universal, so you can get that much. Spin around. You get an elbow swivel, and then this part. Ugh. Single jointed elbow bend. That is probably the most controversial part of this, and the knees. We'll get to those in a bit. But yeah, you only get a single joint, and it does give you a bit over 90. You can see that. But yeah, that is a bit disappointing, but I don't think it's the worst because he's not going to be doing like some crazy like yoga poses and stuff, because he's just going to basically flail around his whip and shoot his gun, and that's it. So it's not the biggest issue, but it is still a bit annoying. But it does mean they get to put the rest of the budget into stuff like his butterfly joint and his absolute mountain of accessories. And I mean, like, again, 90, that's really all you're going to end up using in the articulation. So it's fine. And also it, like, lets the sculpt be a bit nicer as well. And like I showed earlier, the wrist is just on a ball joint that really only gives you the rotation. This part is pretty cool. So we have ab movement, but you'll see there's no break in the sculpt here. That's because it's actually in the lower waist. So you don't get any ab crunch. Like, that is it. But to the back, you get a lot. So no forward ab crunch, but backwards, you get a lot. Side to side, too, surprisingly. And then the waist swivel. So good way to give them a lot of articulation and not break the sculpt. It's like what classic G.I. Joe figures do, except a bit better because this doesn't have that, like, O-ring that, like, will break instantly. That's pretty nice. And then the hips are on ball joints, so you can get that much to the front. A lot less to the back. And then you get outwards movement. You get your thigh swivel, which oddly feels kind of ratcheted. They're like little detents in the joint. And then another annoying part. Single jointed knee bend. That gets you that. Again, it's a bit over 90, but it's still annoying. And there's not really any sculpt under there, so that ends up kind of looking a bit ugly. Not as nice as the elbow. And then ankles, or the backwards. Whoa. Yeah, a lot of backwards movement. And then the tail itself is okay. Oddly get a bit more outwards. Yeah, so it's like that standard kind of action figure tilt where it's on like an angle. Yeah, so his articulation ends up being pretty good. And another thing is that the tolerances all feel like very nice and smooth on this. I think the single joints are annoying. They're my biggest issue with this figure, but they could be a lot worse because he's not been doing crazy action poses, and you do at least get like over 90 degrees of movement. And he makes up for it with some other stuff like that amazing neck joint, really nice waist joint, and butterfly joints. As for some size comparisons with just some other like pop culture action figures, 6-inch, that kind of stuff, here he is with On Marvel Legends, you can see he is like a tad bit shorter. Here he is with a NECA Predator, a Mezco Alien, a standard 3 3/4 inch figure, that being Char Aznable, a Bandai Figure Rise, high grade Gunpla, and a deluxe Transformer. So he's a 6 inch figure, meaning he's like the standard size of a 6 inch figure, aka 6 inches. So that's it for my review of the Adventure Series Indiana Jones. It's actually a pretty good figure. He does have a few flaws, such as the single jointed elbows and knees, but despite that, ends up feeling like the most premium of all of Hasbro's 6 inch figures. And by the way, the size comparisons, if you're wondering why I didn't show Star Wars Black Series or G.I. Joe Classified, is because I don't have Star Wars Black Series, and G.I. Joe Classified, Marvel Legends, all that stuff, they're the same size. Yeah, so overall, this figure is really good. I highly recommend it if you can find it, because I've managed to find, I think, every figure from this first wave relatively easily, except for this guy. He has been quite tricky to find, which is why I bought it as soon as I saw it. If you're wondering where I got it, it was at Toys R Us, so if you don't live in Canada, too bad. Probably gonna be like some online stores that sell it anyways. So if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, then don't. Bye.